The other day, Dave Rubin tweeted that it looks like an event he was going to be speaking at is being canceled due to a smear piece and threats from Antifa. According to the smear piece, Dave is he's a far-right YouTuber who radicalizes people, and that is the most insane thing ever. It's fake news, it's smears, and it's part of the ongoing culture war, and it's shockingly fake. It's mind-blowingly fake. The New York Times actually ran a story, which, when you look at the data, shows Dave Rubin de-radicalizes people. I kid you not. I'm not exaggerating. The New York Times ran a story trying to claim that YouTubers were radicalizing people. What they actually showed was that a conservative started watching intellectual dark web content like Dave Rubin and then became progressive. I don't understand how we can live in this world. It is truly, truly insane. And I gotta say, it's only getting worse. Now, I want to keep the focus on Dave Rubin and his event because I want to stress this is the same tactic they used against the event I sponsored near my own home. For those who aren't familiar, the beginning of the month, I believe it was actually the end of last month, the 31st, there was an event set up by a group called Myth Informed. I sponsored it. I spoke there. And they threatened, there were a bunch of threats. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty. But the goal, or the tactic, I should say, is to increase the cost in every way imaginable to shut you down. That includes writing fake stories, overt, insane fake news, where they're claiming Dave Rubin is far right. It's some of the most insane smears I've ever seen, ever. But you know what? And I want to stress, I want to keep this to Dave Rubin. I have to point out, following all of this Ukraine-Trump scandal stuff, my mind has been blown. I have never seen this level of outright lies and fake news dropped so quickly. Mind-blowingly fake, made up. MSNBC went on and completely fabricated a quote. Or I should say, to be as fair as I can, Katie Tur of MSNBC made up the circumstances in which Trump was talking to Biden and made it seem like Trump literally said, please interfere in the election. So again, I want to keep it to this, but the reason I highlight that is, man, we are really coming to some kind of crux, and I don't know how we rectify this. And I've talked to a lot of people about, civil war and what that would look like. Well, we're certainly in some kind of cold civil war, some kind of information civil war, where Dave Rubin can't have a sit-down conversation because of smears, lies, and threats. I mean, come on. That's low-level terror. What they did to my event, and we won, by the way, in the short term. We are in a longer legal battle now, going after the theater for violating a legal contract they held for over 5 months. I don't want to rehash all this. But anyway, we ended up sort of winning that fight, right? We had our event, we did lose money, but we refused to back down. But this is pure insanity, that we're coming to this point where people can send threats anonymously over the internet with no repercussions. People talk about civil war and they imagine there's going to be people marching in the streets with guns. But here's the thing, man. No, we're at a point now where resources are being fought over. Ideas are being silenced. Politics, it's being shut down, and it's very unique. I'm grateful we're not at a point where, there's physical violence. But this is still nightmarish. So let's actually read the story. This is from the Daily Wire. They say, on Wednesday evening, commentator Dave Rubin stated that his September 29th event with People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier, who was a candidate for Canadian Prime Minister at Mohawk College in Hamilton, had been canceled because of threats from Antifa and an article in the Hamilton Spectator that somehow found cause to call Rubin a far-right YouTube personality. If you are someone who doesn't fact check, you are victim to this. There are, culture warriors and getting jobs in media purposefully to get scalps. I mean that figuratively, right? Like, look at the story of that dude Carson King. Do you follow this? He made a joke sign that was like Venmo me money for beer, raised over $1 million. Everybody was really happy. And some woke journalist dug through 8 years of Twitter history to find an off-color joke from when he was 16 and tried to destroy him with it. What is wrong with these people, okay? I have to stress, if you are trying to destroy someone's life and career, this is an act of political conflict. It's not physical conflict. We're not there yet, and hopefully we don't get there, but we've seen street battles. A lot of people say there will never be a civil war because they think in one dimension. There is a Princeton professor, there is a former Russian oligarch, I believe it was, who have all said, nah, the U.S. is in it. We are in it. You put out a story that's an overt lie. It's information war. Look at what's going on with Ukraine. It is mind-blowingly terrifying. I'm not exaggerating. I'm gonna get into all of this later, but it is terrifying what is happening. A story came out that claimed, according to an aide to the president of Ukraine, it was a prerequisite that they talk about the Biden investigation before the call. And then guess what happens a day later? Correction, fake news. So this is what they do to Dave Rubin. He says, he posts images of these stories where they call him a far-right YouTuber as part of a radicalization pipeline because a Cornell University study. And there it is. I talked about this study. Remember, I said this would happen. The study, let me tell you what they did. And Dave, I hope you're listening. The study took a bunch of YouTube channels and arbitrarily defined them as alt-right, or intellectual dark web. For instance, they claim Ford Fisher was alt-light. Alt-light is typically defined as civic nationalists, except Ford Fisher is just a journalist, and his YouTube content is dry journalism. It's him walking around interviewing people, including Antifa and the far left. It is straightforward news. Documentary footage. No personal opinions, no arguments, nothing. It's him walking around filming. They said that was alt-right. They also claimed Sargon of Akkad was two different people, even though the subject matter of his channels are the same. He has two channels, right? He has multiple channels. They claimed that Sargon was intellectual dark web, but the Thinkery, also Sargon's channel in much the same vein of content, was alt-light. Interesting. Why? Well, the goal of the study was to show that commenters would go to one channel and comment, then later go to an alt-light. What he was saying was that people who comment would go to IDW, then later go to alt-light, and then later go to alt-right, thus proving the pipeline. The only problem? Well, there's two big problems. The study's fake, okay? I mean, they did a real study, but boy, did they just make it up. They claim certain people are alt-light when they're not, or Sargon is two people, because what's really happening is they're not showing the pipeline of comments moving in one direction. They're taking randomly placed comments, but aligning the channels arbitrarily so that it looks like comments are flowing in one direction. But I assure you, that's actually, it's fake. But here's the thing. In the study, they actually state somebody who watches the control group and who watches the intellectual, so somebody who watches the control group versus somebody who watches the intellectual dark web are no more likely to comment on alt-light or alt-right content. That's what the study found. So fact check me on that. I don't have it pulled up, but this is what they're using to smear him. There you go. Somebody works for a university, they publish a paper and say, fact, without checking, and boom, the media uses it as a smear. It is a weapon being loaded into the cannon of fake news, and it's working. They are trying to win political territory with lies, with fake news and smears. You know, I had this thought a long time ago. Actually, I'm sorry for kind of derailing on the subject of the Rubin stuff. Dave said he's going to be putting up the 10,000 times secure. Let me slow down. Dave said he has offered to cover the 10x security fee himself. So the strategy is to increase costs, both personal, professional, and monetary. They want to scare people and say, oh, we'll destroy you. You know, they'll threaten your career, they'll threaten your building, they'll physically threaten you. And so you have to worry about the costs of doing business, of having these conversations. That's the tactic. Why? You know, I don't know what the solution is, but something needs to be done about it. But I had this thought a long time ago. You know, I grew up in the hacker community. I grew up doing fundraising. Fundraising is essentially sales, if you're not familiar, where you try and pitch someone an idea and convince them to hand over money. The difference is in nonprofit fundraising, you're selling them a hope and a dream, whereas sales is they're going to get something for it, be it, you know, like medical devices or a beer. So my job was to convince people that by giving me money, I would do something good with it somewhere else, right? So we're going to save the trees. We're going to save the whales. We're going to save the environment. I was pretty good at it. And I started to think about this 13 years ago. What's the point of war? In war, your goal is to get resources and gain political power, for the most part. It's rather reductive, but you know, a lot of war is about, you know, there's ideological war, which is, I would put religious in the same space. People don't like the encroachment of certain ideologies, so they go to war. There's war for resources. You know, people need food, water, or rare earths, or, you know, nuclear power or something. There's war for revenge. Some people just, you know, get emotional and want to fight. But typically, it's about gaining power over some kind of space. Why would you ever, I always thought this when I was doing fundraising, why would you ever use a weapon and force someone to do your bidding? In the event that all else fails, I can certainly understand. But manipulation is, for the most part, it's foolproof. I always explain this to people. You can absolutely control someone's mind and behavior. And the first thing I do when I explain social engineering is a field of hacking where you're controlling people using social expectations and behaviors. It's actually most of the original idea of what hacking is, and most of what people think hacking is, breaking into emails, is social manipulation like phishing. Trust me, this is related. So I always thought about this. Whenever I talk to people and explain to them social engineering, I'll say something like, I'm going to tell you this, and what you're going to say after I'm done talking to you about this subject, you're going to respond with, yes, but not me, or maybe, something to the effect of, it wouldn't work on you. And they go, oh, okay. I'm like, I'm telling you you're going to say this. And they're like, uh-huh. Then I go through the spiel, explaining the basics of how people do social engineering. There's a bunch of different tactics and techniques for manipulation, but invariably, well, not invariably, but 99% of the time, once I finish explaining this, they go, I get it, yeah, but that would never work on me. And I'm like, didn't I just tell you I was going to make you say that? Proving it did work on you. I try to explain to people, listen, if manipulation didn't work, Coca-Cola wouldn't be buying billboards. They wouldn't be buying commercials. Advertising, propaganda, we know how this works. The reason I'm bringing this up is looking at what's going on with Dave and the smear piece. Why bother with a physical front, with a physical attack, when you can just manipulate people's minds using fake news? It's effective. It works. You don't need to actually hurt someone. The fear of harm, it's my understanding, I could be wrong about this, but the fear of pain is more effective than the pain itself. I read something about torture and this is a while ago, but that's another thing, people know about in interrogations, that the fear of pain is more powerful than actually inducing the pain. So when you think about what's happening right now and the context of what a civil war would be, okay, Dave Rubin was going to be talking to a political candidate, a high profile one. They shut his event down. It may still happen, I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like it's canceled. A bunch of people lie. They publish lies in the paper. Why the media tolerates this, I have no idea, but I can only suggest the media has been corrupted entirely. I don't want to keep this too long, but here's the point I'm trying to make. What they're doing to Dave, what they tried doing to my event, we'll see if Dave, can push back on this one. It's a manipulation tactic, very much so in line with an ideological war. They don't want our ideas to be heard. Who did we host at my event? Well, we had Daryl Davis, one of the most famous anti-racists in the world, a man who de-radicalized over 200 Klansmen, and he happens to be black. And he was our headliner, and he got a standing ovation from the crowd because people at the event, that I sponsored, genuinely don't like violence and racism. But what is this? What is this Antifa, this far left stuff, these threats? They claim to oppose violence. They don't. It's a lie. They're manipulators. They're liars. They're trying to gain political power through manipulation. Here's the thing. Violence will not be tolerated. It is ineffective to actually engage in physical violence for the most part. In today's day and age, the biggest mistake you can make is fighting someone physically because people reject it. People don't want the conflict. It was a mistake they made with Andy No, and boy, are they reeling because of it. The Antifa people who physically attacked No put him on a pedestal, gave him a big, everyone started talking about what happened, and they essentially bolstered his brand. And they know it was a mistake, and they've been trying to come after him ever since with smears and lies and everything. Now, I'm not saying Andy's perfect. I think he gets a lot of things wrong. That's fine. But physically attacking him was absolutely wrong, and it empowered him. That's why, whatever it turns out to be in this, civil war, whatever it is, it's been going on for years. I was at VidCon in 2017. I believe it might have been 2016. No, it was 2017. And a leftist on the stage referred to what's happening as a cultural civil war. A Princeton professor said a cold civil war. It's been repeated over and over again. Stop imagining people running through the streets with, machine guns and bandanas and throwing grenades at each other. We're in the information age. You can get someone to hand over everything with information. The threat of violence may be more powerful than the violence itself. Keep people in fear. Manipulate them with lies, and you don't need to worry about anything else. Let's go back in time. 1930s with the Spanish Civil War. I understand why people fought. It was the only thing they could do, and they didn't know. There was no way to know what the other person, what they thought, who they were, what they wanted. In today's day and age, we have electronic communication. We have cyber attacks. We have hacking. Why bother with showing up and using force against someone to force them into submission when you can threaten to destroy everything and leave them in fear? These Antifa people tell you, we will destroy your life, we will destroy your business, we will reduce you to ash. Don't worry, you'll physically be healthy, but you'll have no job, you'll have no home, and you'll have no friends. That enough is power. We're looking at a different kind of warfare, and this has been going on for a long time. Whether it ever gets to the point of actual physical conflict outside of the street battles we're seeing, I have no idea. But this is it. This is terror, okay? The fake news they write about Dave Rubin, it's mind-blowing what they write. Let me actually read it. Dave Rubin is a far-right YouTube personality and a significant part of a radicalization process ushering people into the neo-Nazi movement, according to a recently published study out of Cornell University, which analyzed 79 million comments and over 330,000 videos to track the effect. That's fake. Absolutely fake. The study didn't conclude that. The study said that the intellectual dark web and the control group were no different, basically. That people who watch The Guardian and people who watch Dave Rubin are no more likely than each other to comment on alt-right videos. And the New York Times story, though it tried concluding there's a pipeline to radicalization, actually showed the inverse. That's the point. It's a lie. It's a game. They want power. They don't want someone like Dave Rubin to speak because Dave Rubin gives space to their political opponents. Dave Rubin is possibly the most dangerous individual when it comes to the cultural civil war for the left. And people like me as well. The reason is, and I really do mean this, Dave Rubin is not an overt Trump supporter or conservative. He's a gay, married, pro-pot smoking, public. I don't know his official stance on public health care, but he used to be a pretty Democrat guy. Similar to my position in a lot of ways, though I think, Dave and I do things relatively differently. We probably disagree on a lot. I think Dave's become a bit more, right libertarian as of recent. But the reason Dave is possibly one of the most dangerous individuals in the culture war is just because of that. Because there are people who are former moderates, Democrats, who will listen to Dave, and Dave's going to say, listen, these people, they're lying. They're smearing us. They're trying to manipulate you, and they can't have that. It's not so much that Dave is a path to radicalization. It's that Dave presents a platform where people can hear the other side and break the brainwash. Dave is not perfect. His show is not perfect, and I disagree with Dave. And we did a really great video where I called it I think it was like Dave Rubin destroys Tim Pool with logic and facts. It was like a silly title, but I addressed to the best of my abilities some criticism, to the best of my political ethics as well, some of the criticisms that's been levied against Dave, and Dave responded to them. Not perfect. There's a lot of people got angry, a lot of people appreciated it. There were some people who said, I'm glad, Tim asked these questions. But as I stated in that video, I think, no one's perfect. Dave's not perfect. But Dave is, in my opinion, for the most part, an honest platform, an honest place for an open discussion. If you're willing to engage rationally and focus on, ideas instead of targeting his character and doing stupid YouTube drama garbage. If you're somebody who watches Dave Rubin, Dave has created a massive platform for individuals to hear ideas they haven't heard before. Naturally, they have to take it to its extreme. Well, that's proof that Dave is opening the door to Nazism. That's psychotic. No, Dave is going to sit down with someone like Jordan Peterson and have a political conversation, and people who might not have heard any of these ideas before are now realizing, hey, that conservative guy who was on Dave's show, not so bad. Wow, I didn't realize that. Dave's creating a place where people can actually come together and find some unity. Not always, not perfectly. A lot of people on the right don't like him. More people on the left don't like him, as we can see here. But this is why he's so dangerous. It's why I'm dangerous. It's why moderates are dangerous. It's why they want to smear everyone as right-wing. The problem is, look, someone like Steven Crowder, he plays to a conservative audience. Conservatives like him, moderates probably watch because they're interested but disagree, and the left doesn't like him. But what happens when you have someone who's actually on the left policy-wise, opening the door for a conversation, humanizing the other? Well, that breaks the narrative. They can't allow that. That's why they must at all costs stop someone like Dave, and they don't, for the most part, care too much about higher profile conservative types. Though, let's be real. They've gone after Crowder, they've gone after Tucker. But Dave is not a path to radicalization. He's a door that can go both ways. You can be on the right and come to the left. You can be on the left and come to the right. It's not a path to radicalization. It's a sit-down conversation. And that's dangerous because it breaks indoctrination. Dave's platform is not perfect. He doesn't host a lot of the SJW types, and it's not necessarily his fault. There are a lot of people who demanded debates with him, and I think there's a lot to criticize the guy for sure. But it's really scary what they do with this event, and it's really scary what they did with my event. The scariest thing to me in all of this cultural civil war, whatever you want to call it, was that we hosted an event. This was my event called Ending Racism, Violence, and Authoritarianism. It was a bunch of mostly centrists, mostly moderate individuals in this country looking for answers. My understanding is most people there were centrists, leaning a little bit to the left, a little to the right, and a lot of libertarian types, which, I don't even know where libertarian falls on the spectrum anymore because there are left libertarians who are actively engaged. So it's very centrist, right? The headline speaker, famous anti-racist, de-radicalizing Klansman. And they tried to shut that down. And that to me is scary because it says if we can't have these conversations between progressives, we had some social justice activists, we had progressives, and many women pulled out. But if we can't sit down and have these conversations, how do we move forward? Well, here's the thing. These people, the far left, Antifa, the smear merchants, they don't want us to move forward. They want the breakdown. They will never have their communist, socialist, whatever, unless the current system breaks. So they cannot allow people like Dave. Steven Crowder plays to one side. They go after him for sure. They want to shut him down, don't get me wrong. But with Dave, he's creating space to bring people closer together. And Steven does as well, but Steven plays more to one side. And admittedly, Dave is now doing similarly because of his pushback on the far left and the left going insane. The point is, centrists are dangerous. The people who are willing to reach out to left and right and entertain these ideas and come to compromise are threatening their ability to destroy everything. And they really mean it. Look, I'm not going to say every single person on the left. That's absurd. But there is a contingent of people on the left, some of whom I know personally, back from the days of Occupy Wall Street, who want to destroy the system. Having told me explicitly, some of these activist organizers, these are like Antifa types, there's no way you can get rid of capitalism through reform. There is no way that you can vote in socialism. They believe the system has to collapse entirely, and then they have to win the fight and force socialism to exist. That's not every activist. It's just enough, and that's why they're playing this game. This video has gone long, but I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment will be coming up on this channel at 1 p.m., and I'll see you there. It is what it is.